In Las Vegas, an empty casino still plays by itself. In Hong Kong, neon lights reveal a shadow that isn't yours. And tonight, both horrors are waiting in the dark. Las Vegas was never truly silent. Even at 4 in the morning, when most cities exhaled into sleep, Vegas still glittered like a fever dream under the desert sky. Neon bled into the pavement. Giant billboards flashed promises of luck, pleasure, and reinvention. Taxis crawled past drunken tourists. Music leaked out of rooftop bars. Somewhere, somebody was always celebrating, always losing, always lying. But on the far north edge of the Strip, past the polished mega-resorts and the choreographed fountains, there stood a place that had long ago slipped out of the city's memory: the Elysian Star Casino. It was once a jewel of old Vegas. In the late 70s, it had been famous for velvet stages, high-stakes poker rooms, and a chandelier so massive that guests used to stop beneath it just to stare. Legends performed there. Mobsters were rumored to hold meetings in its private lounge. Rich men entered smiling and left with hollow eyes. Then, one summer night in 1987, the casino shut down without warning. No official reason was ever given. The newspapers called it a financial collapse. Conspiracy forums whispered about ritual murders, vanishing guests, and security footage erased by something no one could explain. A small fire had broken out in the basement, the city said. Minor damage, temporary closure. But the doors never opened again. 39 years later, the building still stood, boarded windows, rusted signs, a crumbling facade that seemed to absorb moonlight rather than reflect it. Locals avoided the street. Taxi drivers would not stop there. Some claimed they heard slot machines ringing out from inside even though the building had no power, while others swore they saw silhouettes moving behind the upper windows. Maya Torres had spent the last 6 years chasing stories people called fake: urban hauntings, abandoned hospitals, churches with bleeding statues. Her channel, Night Archive, had built a loyal following from her steady voice, cool skepticism, and willingness to enter places everyone else feared. She did not scream for the camera. She did not fake shadows in post. If she was frightened, her viewers knew it was real. And tonight, she was standing across the street from the Elysian Star with her cameraman and producer, Lucas Reed. Lucas adjusted the shoulder rig and looked at the casino through the viewfinder. "I hate it already." Maya smiled faintly. "That's usually a good sign." "No," Lucas said, lowering the camera. "I mean, I really hate it. Look at that place. It doesn't even look abandoned. It looks like it's waiting." Maya glanced up. The casino rose above them like a dead king's palace. Its old sign, Elysian Star, hung crooked, with only the word star still faintly visible under the beam of the streetlight. The entrance was framed by cracked marble columns. Dust and darkness gathered beneath the awning like water under a cave ceiling. She felt it then, not fear exactly, a pressure, as if the building had noticed them. "Perfect," she said softly. They crossed the street. Their fixer, a local named Vince, had gotten them inside through a side service entrance. He had refused to stay. He left them bolt cutters, 2 flashlights, and 1 sentence before speeding away in his truck. "If you hear the jackpot bells, don't follow them." Now Maya cut the chain and pulled the metal door open. A stale gust rolled out, not the smell of mold or rot, something stranger: cigarette smoke, old perfume, hot metal, and beneath it all a faint copper tang like old blood left too long in the sun. Lucas whispered, "Tell me we're not smelling the 80s. Maya clicked on her flashlight. "Rolling? Rolling." She faced the lens. Tonight, we're inside the Elysian Star Casino, abandoned since 1987. No electricity, no staff, no official record of what really happened here. Locals say the machines still run on their own, and the people who hear them too clearly don't come back the same. She paused. "Let's see what's left." They stepped inside. The beam of Maya's light slid across a grand lobby frozen in decay. Marble floors covered in dust, torn red carpeting, shattered mirrors. A chandelier hung overhead, black with grime, yet somehow intact. The front desk still stood, rotted but upright. with brass room bells lined neatly across the counter. Beyond the lobby opened the main casino floor. Rows of slot machines sat in darkness like waiting teeth. Hundreds of them. Their screens were dead, but the reflective glass caught the flashlight beams and threw back warped images. Roulette tables stood overturned. Poker chips were scattered across the floor in drifts like colorful bones. A lounge stage waited at the far end of the room with a ruined microphone stand at center stage. The curtains behind it were stiff with age. Lucas panned slowly. This is insane. No vandalism, no graffiti. Nobody's touched anything. Maya knelt near a slot machine and brushed dust from the chrome trim. It's like the place was sealed. She read the machine's label aloud. I Lady Luck Deluxe. The handle on the side was polished, not rusted, polished. She froze. Lucas, he came closer. Yeah, she pointed. He ran a finger along the metal handle, then held it up. No dust, clean as if someone had used it minutes ago. Okay, he murmured. That's bad. A metallic chime drifted through the room. Soft, bright, delicate. Both of them turned. Another chime answered it from deeper in the casino. Then came the unmistakable electronic trill of a slot machine celebrating a win. Lucas stared into the dark. No power, he said. The sound came again. 3 cheerful notes, absurdly alive in the silence. Maya forced herself to move toward it. Their lights swept over empty aisles of machines. Every step stirred dust, yet there were strange breaks in it now, narrow trails between the rows, horror as though people had been walking there recently. Not footprints exactly, more like the drag of fabric. They rounded a bank of machines and stopped. One slot machine was lit. Its screen glowed with pulsing cherries and golden coins. Lights raced around its frame in frantic celebration. The credit counter climbed higher and higher with no one touching it. Lucas backed up. Nope. Maya approached slowly. Coins began to pour from the tray. Not tokens, silver dollars, one after another, clattering onto the floor in a bright metallic stream. She swept her light around the area. No wires, no generator, no prank setup, just one machine screaming victory into an empty room. Then she saw the stool in front of it. It was occupied. At first, she thought it was a coat thrown over the seat. Then the shape shifted. Yeah, a woman sat at the machine, motionless, facing the glowing screen. Her back was to them, blonde hair pinned high in an old-fashioned style, a sequined black dress, skin pale as candle wax. One hand rested on the machine's lever. Lucas made a broken sound in his throat. Maya. The woman slowly turned her head. Not her body, only her head, farther than any neck should turn. Her face was powder white, lips dark red, eyes 2 black hollows reflecting the machine's colors. When she smiled, it was small and terribly polite. Then the machine went dark. The woman vanished. The stool was empty. The silver dollars on the floor were gone. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Lucas whispered, "We got that. Tell me we got that." His camera screen flickered. Static swallowed the image. Maya swallowed hard. But keep filming. They pushed deeper into the building. Near the poker room, they found security monitors stacked in a glass office, all dead. In the employee hallway behind the floor, faded notices still clung to a corkboard. Work schedules, performance posters, an evacuation map. One handwritten note had been pinned beneath them all. Do not cash out after midnight. The handwriting was jagged, hurried, and pressed so hard it tore the paper. Lucas read it twice. That sounds like something an intern writes before a psych ward stay. Maya said nothing. Farther down the corridor, they found the manager's office. The door was locked, but the wood had split from age. Lucas forced it open with his shoulder. Inside, dust coated everything except the desk. The desk was clean. A ledger lay open under a green banker's lamp. Maya turned the pages carefully. Lists of names, dates, room numbers, winnings. Every entry ended the same way. Balance paid in full. At the back of the ledger, different handwriting appeared. Not neat like the rest, desperate. They do not leave when they lose. They remain in the house. The house feeds itself. God forgive me. I opened the door. Lucas was no longer pretending to be calm. We should go. A laugh echoed down the hallway. Not loud, not human. It sounded like dozens of people chuckling at once from behind closed teeth. The temperature dropped so sharply Maya saw her breath. The banker's lamp on the desk flickered on by itself, bathing the room in green light. Somewhere out on the casino floor, machines began to wake. One by one. Ding, ding, ding. Whir. Jackpot bells. Spinning reels. Within seconds, the whole building had come alive. Flashing lights exploded across the darkness beyond the office door. Music blared in warped fragments. The dead casino roared back into operation. And underneath it all rose another sound. Applause. Maya stepped into the hallway and looked toward the casino floor. It was full. People stood between the machines in old suits and cocktail dresses, their forms shimmering like heat haze. Some smiled at the screens. Some carried drinks. Some sat at tables, cards in hand, heads bowed. Their skin was colorless, their movements slow and wrong, like actors remembering how to be alive. A waitress drifted by holding a tray of glasses full of something blacker than wine. No one looked directly at Maya, not at first. Then, one by one, they turned. Dozens of dead eyes fixed on her and Lucas. Oh, the applause stopped. At the center of the crowd, beneath the dead chandelier, stood a tall man in a white tuxedo with slicked back hair and a carnation pinned to his lapel. His face was handsome in the way old photographs are handsome, too still, too deliberate. His smile deepened as if he recognized them. He lifted one hand and gestured toward the casino floor, a host inviting guests to play. Lucas whispered, "Run." The tall man spoke, and though his lips barely moved, his voice filled the room. "Welcome back." The slot machines erupted at once. Lights strobed red and gold. The ghostly patrons surged forward, not quickly but with horrible certainty, gliding between the rows. Maya grabbed Lucas's arm and ran. They bolted through the corridor, past the manager's office, through the lobby. Behind them came laughter, machine music, and the dragging rush of many feet that were not touching the ground. The front doors slammed shut before they reached them. Maya crashed into the glass so hard her shoulder burst with pain. Outside, the neon city glittered just beyond the doors. Inside, the casino lights blazed brighter. Lucas pulled her away. Back, back, service hall. They ran into the dark as the sound of the casino followed them like something delighted to finally have players again. And from somewhere in the building, hidden below the music, came a voice over the old intercom. "Please place your final bets." The service hallway twisted behind the main floor, like veins behind a corpse's skin. Maya and Lucas ran blindly through the darkness, their flashlights jolting against stained walls and peeling wallpaper. Behind them, the sounds of the revived casino rolled through the corridors in waves, bells ringing, cards slapping tables, glasses clinking, and every so often a burst of ghostly laughter that rose too high and snapped too suddenly into silence. Lucas shoved a metal door open and nearly fell down a short flight of stairs. "Basement," he gasped. "Go." They descended into stale blackness. The air below was colder, thick with the smell of damp concrete, ash, and something burned long ago that had never completely gone away. At the bottom of the steps stretched a service level lined with storage rooms, old boiler pipes, hard cages for liquor inventory. Their lights swung over boxes collapsed into pulp, broken racks, and stains on the floor that looked too dark to be rust. The casino above them throbbed like a living thing. Through the ceiling came the muffled rhythm of activity, spinning reels, distant music, footsteps gliding in circles. It no longer sounded like haunting, it sounded like business. Lucas braced himself against the wall, breathing hard. "Tell me you still think this is great content." Maya crouched, trying to steady her shaking hands. "We're getting out first, content later." "Good, excellent shift in priorities." She forced herself to think. The front doors had sealed. The side entrance was too far. The building clearly wanted them inside. That meant the safest place might be where the thing controlling it began. But in places like this, The center of the haunting was never the grand ballroom or the blood-stained bedroom people imagined. It was the wound underneath, the hidden room, the buried object, the original bargain. And in Old Vegas, every bargain had a basement. "Come on," she said. They moved deeper underground. At the end of the corridor, a rusted sign still hung crooked from the ceiling. Accounting/vault/maintenance/furnace. The accounting office had been ransacked by time, but not by looters. Filing cabinets stood open, papers spread across the floor in neat strips as if blown by a very careful wind. Maya picked one up and read under the flashlight beam. It was a personnel report from July 1987. One sentence had been circled in red ink. Night staff report repeated complaints of phantom winners requesting payout after recorded closing hours. Lucas swallowed. Phantom winners. Another page. Security unable to verify identities of guests in Blue Room. Records do not match occupancy. Another. 3 dealers resigned after describing the same recurring customer. Male, white tuxedo, no reflection in mirrored bar. Lucas stared at her. White tuxedo. The tall host. Maya kept reading until she found a memo clipped to the back. From Gabriel Voss, General Manager. To Executive Board Subject, Midnight Operations. The typed paragraphs were formal, but beneath them someone had scrawled frantic notes in pen. The new private game has increased revenue beyond expectation. Our special patron requests discretion. No guest is to be denied entry after midnight. All debts are to be settled before sunrise. In the margins, the same desperate handwriting as the ledger screamed across the paper. It is not a patron. We invited something in no one who wins leaves, no one who loses dies. Maya folded the paper and slipped it into her jacket. They continued toward the vault. The old security door stood half open, bent inward as if forced from the inside. The vault beyond was circular and lined with empty shelves. At the center lay stacks of casino chips swept into a ring on the floor. Inside the ring were candle stubs melted into the concrete, black wax pooled like dried organs. Lucas whispered, "Tell me this wasn't here in the official tour brochure." Maya shone her light at the back wall. There was a mural painted directly onto the steel. Not casino art, not logos. A desert under a starless sky, a tower of light rising from the sand. At the base of the tower, small human figures knelt around a table, and above them hovered a faceless thing in a white suit. She stepped closer and saw words scratched beneath the image. Fortune is a door. Debt is the key. Something moved behind them. They spun. A roulette wheel rolled slowly into the vault by itself and stopped at the threshold, wobbling in place. On it sat a single ivory ball. Tick, tick, tick. Then the ball dropped into a slot. Read 13. From somewhere upstairs, as if in response, a woman screamed. The sound ended in wet, choking silence. Lucas recoiled. "We are leaving. Basement wound. Curse source. Demon tax office. I don't care." Before Maya could answer, the vault door slammed. Darkness swallowed them. Lucas cursed and smacked his flashlight until the beam steadied. Maya hurried to the door and pushed. It would not move. Then came the voice. Not from a speaker, not from outside, from within the steel itself, smooth, pleasant, male. Every guest must settle their account. Lucas backed away, light trembling in his hand. "Who are you?" The voice chuckled. "You have already seen me." The candle wax on the floor began to soften, though no heat touched the room. A low golden glow leaked from between the stacked chips inside the circle. One by one, the chips tipped over and spun in place like tiny wheels. Maya knew then that the circle was not protection. It was invitation. The chips burst upward. Instead of falling, they hung in the air, spinning around the room in widening rings. Colors blurred. Red, black, ivory, gold. Lucas shouted as one sliced his cheek, leaving a thin line of blood. More followed, whirling faster until the vault became a storm of gambling tokens. At the center of the room, where the ritual circle had been, a figure slowly formed. White tuxedo, perfect posture, polished shoes, a red carnation fresh as if cut moments ago. The man from the casino floor. Up close, his beauty was obscene, skin smooth as porcelain, eyes dark and depthless, smile modest, almost charming. Gabriel Voss called me Mr. Vale, he said. You may do the same. Maya's voice came out raw. What are you? Mr. Vale tilted his head. A businessman. The spinning chips dropped all at once. None hit the ground. They vanished before touching it. Lucas grabbed a broken shelf rod and held it like a weapon. Open the door, mister. Our Vale looked at him with faint amusement. That is not how games work. Maya forced herself to speak. This place is feeding on people. This place, Mr. Vale corrected gently, is honoring terms. People come seeking fortune. I provide it. The house collects what is owed. You trap them. No, he said. They stay. His expression shifted then, and for the first time something old and cruel showed through the polished mask. Do you know what desire does to a human soul? How brightly it burns, how willingly it bargains. One more spin, one more hand, one more chance to become someone else. He stepped closer. This city was built as a prayer to appetite. I simply answered. Lucas swung the metal rod at his head. The blow passed through empty air. Mr. Vale was suddenly behind him. Lucas choked as invisible force lifted him off the floor by the throat. His flashlight clattered away, rolling in a wide circle. Maya lunged, grabbing Lucas's arm, but something pushed her back so hard she crashed into the shelves. Mr. Vale's smile never changed. Your friend is noisy. Stop, Maya shouted. He looked at her. Then play. A card table appeared between them. It had not been there a second before. Green felt, 2 chairs, a deck of black-backed cards waiting in the center. Beside the deck sat a polished brass token shaped like a star. Lucas dropped to the floor, gasping, released. Maya stared. No. Mr. Vale rested one hand on the chair back. You entered my house. You filmed my guests. You attempted to flee without cashing out. That is impolite. Lucas managed. Don't. But Maya already understood. Refusing would not save them. In hauntings there were rules even horror obeyed. Bargains, invitations, symbols. And if this thing had bound the entire casino to a game, then the only path through it would also be a game. What are the stakes? She asked. Mr. Vale's eyes glinted. At last, a professional. He gestured to Lucas. If you lose, he remains. Then he pointed at Maya's chest. If you win, I answer one question truthfully. One question? You will find it more valuable than you assume. Maya looked at Lucas. Blood ran from the cut on his cheek. His face was paper white. She sat. Mr. Vale took the opposite chair. The deck shuffled itself between his hands, in a blur too fast to follow. What game? She whispered. Blackjack, he said. The simplest sins are often the purest. He dealt. The cards slapped the felt with surgical precision. Maya's pulse hammered so loudly, she barely heard the casino above them. She looked down. 10 of spades. 7 of hearts. 17. Mr. Vale had 1 card face up. 6 of clubs. He smiled. A strong beginning. Maya's mouth was dry. In ordinary blackjack, the dealer showing 6 was weak. Most players stayed, but this was not ordinary. The room itself seemed to lean inward, listening. Stand, she said. Mr. Vale revealed his hidden card. 5 of diamonds, 11. He drew again. 3, 14, again. 2, 16, again. Ace, 17. Push, no winner. Lucas breathed. What does that mean? Mr. Vale gathered the cards. It means the house is patient. He dealt the second round. Maya, 9 and 7, 16. Mr. Vale showed King of Hearts, a terrible hand. Hit, she whispered. He slid her a card. 5, 21. For the first time, Lucas almost smiled. Mr. Vale revealed his hidden card. Ace, 21. Another push. Maya felt cold spread through her limbs. You can't just... I can, he said. The third round came fast. Maya, Queen and 6. 16 again. Mr. Vale showed 4. She shut her eyes for half a second. There had to be a pattern. He wasn't playing to win quickly. He was stretching the moment, letting dread ripen. Like the slot machines, like the ledger, like every soul stuck upstairs in endless play. The point was not chance. The point was consent repeated until it became surrender. She opened her eyes and saw something on the brass star token beside the deck. Tiny engraved letters. The house enters last. That was not blackjack. Or rather, not only blackjack, but a rule hidden inside the ritual. Mr. Vale followed her gaze and smiled wider, realizing she had noticed. She made her choice. Stand. He revealed a 9 beneath his 4. 13. Then, instead of drawing, he froze. His hand hovered above the deck. For one instant, his perfect expression cracked, not with rage but irritation. The house enters last, Maya said softly. The vault shook. Behind Mr. Vale, the mural on the wall rippled like disturbed water. The painted desert darkened. Shapes moved beneath the steel. Somewhere above them, the casino floor let out a vast moan, as if every machine had inhaled at once. Mr. Vale looked at Maya with true hatred now. Well done. The deck burst into flame, black fire. It raced across the table, over his hands, up his sleeves, but he did not burn. Instead, the white tuxedo began to split at the seams, revealing something underneath that had no business wearing human shape. Endless darkness layered with mouths, hands pressing outward beneath skin that was not skin. A torso full of spinning roulette numbers, a face unfolding into many faces. Lucas screamed. Mr. Vale rose from the chair, voice deepening into a chorus. One question, he thundered. Maya stood, nearly collapsing from terror. How do we end this? His many mouths smiled. You do not. Then, softer with sick delight, you only close the table. The vault door flew open. A blast of warm casino air rolled in, carrying music, cigarette smoke, and the voices of hundreds of dead gamblers speaking at once. Maya grabbed Lucas and ran. Behind them, the thing in the tuxedo laughed with a sound like coins pouring endlessly into a bottomless tray. And over the intercom, now crystal clear, a woman's cheerful voice announced, "Midnight tournament begins in 5 minutes. All remaining guests report to the main floor." By the time Maya and Lucas reached the basement stairs, the casino no longer felt abandoned at all. It felt crowded. The air had thickened with perfume, cigar smoke, expensive liquor, and the hot electrical scent of machines running at full power. Music from the lounge spilled through the corridors, saxophone and piano, lively and seductive, like a band warming up for a crowd that had been dead for decades. Laughter drifted down the stairwell. High heels clicked overhead. Someone somewhere shouted with joy at a winning hand. Maya stopped at the landing and peered through the crack of the door leading back to the main floor. The Elysian Star was alive in all its old glamour. Every chandelier blazed with gold light. The velvet drapes shimmered crimson. Slot machines flashed in endless rows. Cocktail servers glided through aisles carrying silver trays. The dead sat shoulder to shoulder at poker tables and craps stations, faces pale and luminous beneath the glow. They looked almost normal now, almost human, until one smiled too wide, or blinked too slowly, or turned its head farther than bones should allow. At the center of it all stood a raised platform that had not been there before. A championship table, black felt, gold trim, 5 empty chairs. Above it hung a giant scoreboard lit in red numbers. Remaining guests, 5. Lucas saw it too. 5? There are 2 of us. Maya scanned the room and found the others. At the far end of the casino stood 3 living people, all trapped in different corners by drifting clusters of ghostly patrons. A middle-aged security guard in a modern uniform, gripping a flashlight like a club. A young woman in a cocktail dress, mascara streaked down her cheeks, shaking uncontrollably near the roulette pit. And an older man in a Hawaiian shirt, clutching a stack of chips to his chest, as if he still thought this was only a nightmare with rules he could game. 5 living souls, tournament players. Mr. Vale had been collecting them. We need to get them out, Maya whispered. Lucas gave her a hollow look. Through the wall? Through the possessed front door? Through the literal demon casino? Maya unfolded the memo she had taken from accounting and the page from the ledger. One line mattered now more than the others. All debts are to be settled before sunrise. And the thing had told her something else. You only close the table, not destroy the casino, not banish the spirit. Close the table. The source was the game itself. The tournament began when enough players remained alive. If the table closed before it could finish, by breaking the ritual, the seating, the house rule, maybe the casino would shut down again. Maybe. The stage band abruptly cut off. A hush rolled across the floor. All heads turned toward the championship platform. Mr. Vale appeared beside it in his perfect white tuxedo, once again handsome and composed, the red carnation fresh against his lapel. If not for the memory of the thing beneath his skin, Maya might have believed she imagined it. He lifted a glass. "Distinguished guests," he said, voice carrying effortlessly through the room. "Thank you for your patience. Tonight's final tournament will determine who leaves fortunate and who remains family." The dead applauded. Lucas muttered, "I really hate this city." Mr. Vale continued, "As tradition requires, all players must take their assigned seats voluntarily." Maya felt a spark of hope. Voluntarily. Another rule. If one of them refused, would that stop the game? Or would Vale simply force them and twist the meaning? No, he was too careful for that. There had to be a cleaner break. The young woman in the cocktail dress suddenly bolted across the floor. Ghosts reached for her, but did not quite touch. She almost made it to the lobby before a wall of slot machines lit up in front of her, hemming her in with flashing symbols and screaming jackpots. She dropped to the carpet, sobbing. Vale smiled sadly, as if disappointed by bad manners. Guests who disturbed the house are penalized. The scoreboard changed. Remaining guests, 4. The woman's scream turned into static. For half a second, Maya saw her body collapse inward like a losing signal on a broken television. Then she was gone. One of the empty seats at the championship table slid back by itself. Occupied. A pale version of the same woman now sat there smiling blankly, hands folded, dead mascara still on her cheeks. Lucas made a sound of horror. No. Maya's stomach clenched. Losing did not always mean death first. Sometimes the casino simply converted you. That left 4 living players. They had almost no time. She gripped Lucas's wrist. "Listen, the table needs voluntary seats. It needs the final game completed before sunrise. We break the table, we shut the house. That's the only thing I've got." "How?" She looked toward the ceiling. The enormous chandelier hung directly above the platform, all glittering crystal and rusted support chain. "Bring it down." Lucas followed her gaze. "That's insane." "Everything in here is insane." She pointed toward the old security guard. "Get him. I'll get the tourist, then we move together." "And the dead woman?" Maya's face went tight. "Too late." They split. Maya moved low between rows of machines, keeping tables between herself and the drifting patrons. None touched her yet, but many watched. Their smiles sharpened as she passed. At one roulette table, a dead croupier spun the wheel with no hand on the spindle. At a nearby craps station, translucent men in tuxedos pounded the felt and chanted for the dice to roll. At the bar, a pianist with half his face burned away played a ragtime melody, without ever glancing at the keys. She reached the tourist, a sweating man in his 60s who reeked of whiskey and panic. "Can you walk?" she whispered. He nodded frantically. "What's your name?" Don Keller." "Don, listen to me carefully. Whatever happens, do not sit at that final table." His eyes darted to the chips in his hands. "I won these." Maya grabbed his shoulders. "There is no winning here." To her left, Lucas was helping the security guard, a stocky black man in his 40s with a name patch reading Harris. Good. They were all still moving. Then the lounge speakers crackled. "Final players," Vale said warmly. "Please approach. Delay suggests forfeiture, and forfeiture always favors the house." The floor changed beneath them. Red carpet rippled outward like liquid, guiding paths toward the platform. The slot machines began to chant in synchronized voices, "Play now, play now, play now." Ghosts stepped away from the aisles, opening 4 perfect lanes to the table, an invitation impossible to ignore. Maya felt the pull immediately, not physical, but psychic, like a craving rising from some dark reservoir inside her. She imagined sitting down, just one hand, one deal, maybe a chance to win Lucas back, to save the others, to ask another question, to understand. The casino fed on wanting more. It knew exactly where to whisper. She dug her nails into her palms until pain cut through the spell. "Run to the stage rigging," she ordered. They sprinted together toward the lounge side of the floor. The dead watched but did not interfere. The game needed willing players, and that gave them a sliver of freedom. Behind the stage, old catwalk ladders climbed into darkness above the curtains. Maya shoved Harris toward them. "Can you climb?" "I used to work demolition," he said, breathless. "Tell me what breaks." "Chandelier chain above the main platform." Don Keller stared upward in horror. "You're going to drop that thing?" Maya met his eyes. "Unless you'd rather sit with them." That settled it. They climbed. Below them, Mr. Vale remained at the championship table, hands clasped behind his back, watching with maddening calm. More ghostly players took seats around the platform. Cards fluttered through the air and stacked themselves. The entire casino had fallen silent, except for the machinery hum and the faint hiss of air conditioning from a building that should not have had power. From up on the catwalk, Maya saw the scale of it. The dead were everywhere. Hundreds, maybe more. Every lost gambler, every vanished guest, every soul that had stayed to keep playing. At the far end of the room, the front doors were no longer glass at all, but black mirrors reflecting only the casino interior. Escape that way had never existed. Lucas crawled across the beam toward the chandelier rig. "Chain's ancient," he called. "But there's backup cable." Harris used a maintenance wrench from his belt to hammer at the housing bolts. Don knelt uselessly, muttering prayers. Below them, Vale's voice rose again. "Players who decline their seats may appoint substitutes." The dead all turned upward, toward the catwalk. Maya understood too late. The rule would let the house take replacements. Ghosts began climbing the stage ladders, not fast, not frantically, just steadily, smiling as they came. "So Lucas!" she shouted. He slammed the wrench into the cable lock again and again. Bolts shrieked loose. One snapped. The chandelier dipped. The first ghost reached the catwalk beside Don Keller. It was a woman in feathers and pearls, eyes milky white, lips split at the corners. She touched Don's ankle. He screamed and toppled backward through the railing. Maya lunged for him and missed, but he did not hit the ground. Halfway down, his body jerked to a stop in midair, suspended as if caught in invisible strings. His face twisted in mute terror. Slowly, impossibly, he drifted toward one of the empty chairs at the final table and settled into it upright, like a puppet being seated for dinner. The scoreboard flashed. Remaining guests: 3. Mr. Vale smiled at Maya. 3 seats filled, 2 more. Ghosts spilled onto the catwalk now, the elegant and rotten, reaching with ringed fingers and dealer's hands. Harris swung the wrench and crushed one's jaw clear off, but the ghost kept coming. Lucas kicked another through a gap in the railing, and it dissolved into a rain of chips before touching the floor. Maya grabbed the backup cable and sawed it against a jagged beam edge. Too thick, too slow. Then she remembered the brass star token still in her pocket. She pulled it out. It burned cold in her hand. Without thinking, she drove its sharp edge against the cable. The metal parted like wet thread. The chandelier dropped. For one glorious second, everything froze. The dead, the living, Mr. Vale himself. Then 30 feet of crystal, brass, and rust came crashing down onto the championship table. The impact shook the entire casino. Then glass exploded across the floor in a storm of glittering shards. The table split down the middle. The chairs shattered. The scoreboard burst in a spray of sparks. A shockwave rolled through the room, and every slot machine screamed at once, not with synthetic jingles, but with human voices, thousands of them, all crying out in terror and rage. The lights died. Total darkness. Then came Mr. Vale's true voice, not human, not singular, a canyon of mouths roaring from every corner of the casino. Who closed the table? The dead began to unravel. Maya's flashlight spun loose and landed beam up, casting mad shadows through the wreckage below. Ghost patrons flickered violently, bodies breaking into static and ash. Some reached for the fallen table as if trying to hold themselves together. Others simply collapsed into piles of chips, cards, teeth, and dust. But Mr. Vale remained. He stood amid the crushed chandelier untouched, though now his disguise peeled away in strips. Beneath the tuxedo moved an abyss crowded with faces pressing outward. Gamblers and dealers and lost guests fused into one towering shape, wearing a man like a suit. Lucas shouted, "Run!" They did. Maya, Lucas, and Harris scrambled down the opposite side of the catwalk as the casino tore itself apart. Walls split. Machines burst into flame with cold blue fire. The mirrored doors in the lobby cracked from top to bottom. From somewhere below, pipes ruptured and showered steam across the floor. Mr. Vale rose above it all, huge now, stretching nearly to the chandelier chains, his body a mass of cards, bones, teeth, and spinning reels. "You cannot end debt," he thundered. "You only postpone collection." Maya hit the floor running. Harris was beside her, Lucas just behind. The front doors, once black mirrors, were becoming glass again. Through them they could see the Las Vegas street and the pale blue hint of approaching dawn. So close, ghosts flew apart around them like torn banners. The security guard Harris reached the doors first and slammed his shoulder into them. This time they burst outward. Cold desert air rushed in. Maya stumbled onto the sidewalk just as the first sunlight touched the highest edge of the Elysian star sign. Behind her, Lucas fell hard onto the concrete, dragging himself away from the threshold. Harris rolled after them, coughing blood and dust. They turned in time to see the casino convulse inward. Every window shattered simultaneously. A flood of chips and cards blasted out into the street, followed by one final impossibly loud jackpot bell. Then, the entire facade caved in on itself, not with the force of an explosion, but with the exhausted collapse of something that had been pretending to stand for far too long. Silence. Real silence. No music. No bells. No applause. Only distant city traffic and the whistle of desert wind through rubble. Emergency sirens began wailing somewhere far away. Lucas lay on his back, laughing hysterically, half from relief, half from shock. Harris sat up slowly, staring at the ruined casino. Maya could not move at all. As the sun rose higher, a glitter of metal caught her eye near the curb. She walked over and picked it up. A casino chip, black, heavy, warm, stamped on one side with the old Elysian star logo, or stamped on the other with a single phrase, "Valid after midnight." Maya stared at it until Lucas called her name. When she looked back at the rubble, she thought, just for a moment, she saw a man in a white tuxedo standing calmly inside the dust, untouched by collapse, watching her with endless patience. Then, the sirens drowned everything out. The official story later would say the Elysian star finally succumbed to structural failure. 3 survivors were found near the site, disoriented but alive. No remains from any historic victims were identified in the collapse. No basement vault appeared on city plans. No record of Gabriel Voss's resignation or death was ever recovered. Night Archive uploaded only part of the footage. Most of it had been corrupted. But in one surviving clip, no more than 6 seconds long, the camera panned across the empty casino floor before the haunting began. The machines were dark, the chairs were empty, no people were visible, except in the far back corner. A man in a white tuxedo stood beside a slot machine, facing the camera, smiling, and each time Maya tried to delete the clip, it reappeared in the project folder before midnight. A week later, Harris resigned from security work and moved out of state. Don Keller was never officially listed among the survivors, and Lucas stopped gambling entirely, even in video games. As for Maya, some nights when her apartment is silent and the city outside is asleep, she hears a bright electronic chime from the kitchen, a slot machine celebrating a win. Just one machine, just one spin, and every time it happens, She checks the black chip locked in her desk drawer. It has not moved, but the writing on the back has changed. What once said, "valid after midnight," now says, "one final player remains." Next part, the neon shadow. Hong Kong never truly slept. Even after midnight, the city glowed like a restless machine, alive with color, sound, and movement. Neon signs buzzed above wet streets, trams rattled past sleepless windows, markets exhaled the smell of fish, gasoline, incense, and hot oil into the humid air. People moved fast here, heads down, shoulders forward, as if the city itself kept pushing them. On rainy nights, the neon became something else. It bled. Red and blue and acid green stretched across puddles and alleyways, turning the streets into broken mirrors. Faces flickered beneath signs advertising pawn shops, herbal medicine, late-night mahjong rooms, karaoke bars, and old apartment blocks stacked so tightly together they looked stitched from shadow. And in one district of Old Kowloon, or hidden behind a lane too narrow for taxis and too quiet for tourists, there was a street where people stopped looking at their reflections, because sometimes, under the neon, a person could cast two shadows. One belonged to them, the other did not. Ming Yue did not believe in ghost stories. At 28, she worked as a freelance videographer who specialized in urban documentaries, disappearing neighborhoods, forgotten trades, shrinking temples, and the last places in Hong Kong where old superstitions still survived, under the weight of high-rise modern life. She liked stories, but she liked facts more. If old women in tea houses whispered about spirits in the stairwells, Ming listened politely, filmed the faded walls, and edited the whole thing into something beautiful and human. She did not chase cheap hauntings. She chased memory. That was why she ignored the story the first time she heard it. She was filming a night market in Sham Shui Po when an elderly stall owner noticed her camera lingering on a row of broken neon signs stacked beside his shop. "You like old lights?" he asked in Cantonese. Ming smiled. "They look better on camera than LED. The man gave a dry laugh. "Old lights remember people. New lights only sell things." She kept filming. "That sounds like something I should put in my documentary." He did not smile back. "There is one sign in Kowloon City," he said, lowering his voice. "A red sign above an abandoned photo studio. If its light touches you when the rain starts, do not stand still. Do not look down. And if you see a second shadow beside your own, do not let it catch up." Ming glanced over. The old man's face had changed. He no longer looked like a seller trying to entertain a young filmmaker. He looked like someone remembering a funeral. "Where is this place?" she asked. He pointed with two fingers toward the east. "Lan Fong Lane, near the old tenement blocks. Nobody there uses umbrellas after midnight." Ming almost laughed. Instead, she asked, "Why?" The old man's eyes moved to the neon scrap by his feet. "Because umbrellas make you walk slower." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, while reviewing location notes for another project, Ming realized Lan Fong Lane sat only a few streets away from a building she had planned to film, an old Tong Lao apartment block scheduled for demolition. It was the kind of place she loved documenting. Narrow balconies, tile stairwells, rusting mailboxes, that laundry hanging over alley space so tight, the sky looked sliced into ribbons. She told herself the ghost story was irrelevant. She packed her camera anyway. The rain began just after 11:40 p.m. By the time Ming got off the minibus and reached Kowloon City, the streets had turned slick and reflective. Signs buzzed overhead in wet halos. Air conditioners dripped from windows. A butcher shop's red light flickered through the rain like a warning. Somewhere above her, a woman laughed from behind laundry lines. Somewhere below, in a basement restaurant, plates clattered and voices rose over the hiss of oil. Lan Fong Lane was easy to miss. It opened between a shuttered electronics repair shop and a staircase so narrow it looked like it led nowhere. The alley beyond was just wide enough for two people to pass shoulder to shoulder. On one side stood a row of old tenement buildings with cages over the windows. On the other side ran a wall of faded signs, metal pipes and drain stains. Above it all hung neon. Not the polished kind from tourist postcards. These were older, dirtier, half-broken, characters missing strokes, tubes dim at the edges, wires exposed like veins. At the alley's midpoint, above a sealed storefront with cracked glass, burned the sign the old man had mentioned, a rectangular panel of red neon, still working after all these years. The faded English letters beneath the Chinese characters read, "Golden Memories Photo." The studio below it was dead. Dust filmed the windows. A yellowed bridal portrait leaned face down behind the glass. The door had been chained shut so long that rust had eaten into the latch. But the sign was very much alive. Its red glow spread across the pavement like diluted blood. Ming stood beneath an overhang and adjusted her camera settings. She filmed the alley first, rainwater running through cracks, flickering reflections, the geometry of pipes and balconies above. Then she zoomed in on the sign. The neon hummed louder through her mic than she expected, a low electrical insect sound that seemed almost organic in the narrow lane. She spoke softly into the camera. Lanfang Lane, Kowloon City, former commercial residential stretch. Several of these signs are estimated to be over 40 years old. Most of the businesses are closed or relocated, but some of the lights still operate intermittently. She tilted up toward the red sign. Locals say this one is unlucky. A voice behind her said, "Only if it likes you." Ming turned sharply. A woman stood under a black umbrella at the mouth of the alley. She was perhaps in her 60s, tall and thin, wearing a dark qipao beneath a raincoat. Her face was narrow, elegant, and drained of warmth. In one hand she held a plastic bag from a pharmacy. In the other she held the umbrella so still it looked nailed to the air. Ming lowered the camera. "Sorry, did I block your way?" The woman did not move. "You are filming the sign," she said. "Yes." The woman's gaze lifted to the neon. "Then, leave before the rain gets heavier. It's already raining." "Not yet." There was something strange about the way she said it, without emphasis but with certainty. Ming gave a polite nod. "I'll be quick." The woman looked at her for one long second more. Then she stepped aside, not into the alley but away from it, and continued walking down the main street without ever looking back. Ming watched her go, unsettled for reasons she could not name. Then the rain changed. Until that moment, it had been the usual Hong Kong drizzle, annoying, constant, light enough to ignore. Now it thickened into a harder fall, drumming against metal awnings and streaming off the signs in silver ropes. The alley darkened as if the sky had lowered itself just above the rooftops. Ming pulled up her hood and kept filming. The red sign buzzed louder, its light smeared across the wet pavement in one long glowing stain. That was when she noticed the shadows. At first she thought it was an angle problem. The alley was narrow, lights were scattered, and reflections overlapped in strange ways. Her own shadow stretched along the wall beside her, thin and wavering under the sign's glow. But another shadow stood next to it. It was slightly taller than hers, and though Ming had not moved, it had shifted closer. She looked up immediately, scanning the alley. No one, no footsteps, no umbrella, no shape behind the rain. Her pulse ticked once, hard. She aimed the camera at the wall. In the viewfinder, both shadows were visible, hers clearly defined, and beside it a second darker silhouette, head bowed, shoulders narrow, one arm too long. Ming took a step back. Her shadow moved with her. The second one did not. It stayed where it was for half a second too long. Then it slid to match her position. Ming felt the blood leave her face. She lowered the camera and stared directly at the wall. Only one shadow. She raised the camera again. Two, and the second shape was now closer to hers, almost touching. A burst of static hissed through the audio feed. The screen glitched, horizontal lines slicing across the image. For a moment, the viewfinder showed not the alley wall, but the inside of the photo studio window. Though Ming was not pointing at it, something pale was reflected there, standing just inside the chain door. Then the image snapped back. She backed away from the sign. The second shadow lengthened. She remembered the old stall owner's words then, with sudden sick clarity. "Do not stand still. Do not look down. Do not let it catch up." Ming turned and walked quickly toward the alley mouth. Behind her, The neon humming rose into a sharper pitch, not electrical now, almost like whispering. She kept her head up and walked faster, trying not to slip on the slick pavement. She did not run. Running in wet Hong Kong alleyways meant falling. Falling meant stopping. Stopping meant something moved at the edge of her vision. A shadow stretched along the wall beside her, thin as spilled ink. Then another. The second shadow was no longer beside hers. It was behind it, matching every step. And gaining. Ming's throat tightened. She forced herself not to look at the ground, but the alley was full of puddles, each one carrying distorted pieces of the red light. In every puddle she passed, she caught a glimpse of it, an outline walking just behind her, too close with no body casting it. Her breathing quickened. The alley seemed longer than before. She was certain of that. The mouth of the lane should have been only a few meters away, but the more she walked, the farther the street beyond seemed to retreat. Neon signs blurred at the edges. Rain struck the pavement so hard, it sounded like a crowd applauding very softly. Then came the click. A camera shutter. Ming stopped before she could stop herself. The sound came again from behind the chain door of the old photo studio. Click, click, click. She turned. The storefront window, dark a moment ago, now glowed faintly from within. Not bright, just enough to reveal rows of hanging photographs suspended on wires, swaying gently though there was no wind inside. Black and white portraits, couples, children, formal family poses, brides with stiff smiles, men in uniforms, old faces from another Hong Kong. All of them had something wrong with the shadows behind them. Each shadow was slightly separate from the body casting it. Each one leaned a little too far to the side. And in the center of the studio stood a figure behind an old-fashioned camera, covered by a black cloth. It lifted one long arm and beckoned. Ming stumbled backward. The red neon flickered violently overhead. For one instant, the entire alley went black. In that second of darkness, she heard footsteps behind her. Not her own. Wet. Soft. One step away. The neon flashed back on. Her camera dropped from her numb hands and hit the pavement. In the puddle at her feet, illuminated in red, she finally saw it clearly. Her own reflection. And behind it, standing so close its head nearly rested on her shoulder, was a second reflection with no face at all. Only a smooth darkness where features should be. Its arm was reaching forward, not toward her body, but toward the shadow at her feet. Ming screamed and ran. This time she did not care if she slipped. She ran out of Lanfang Lane into the brighter main street, skidding past a closed noodle shop and nearly crashing into a tram stop railing. People were still around here. A delivery rider smoking beneath an awning, a couple hurrying under a shared umbrella, a taxi drifting slowly through the rain. Normal city life, normal noise, normal light. Ming bent double, gasping. When she looked down, she had only one shadow. She laughed once, shakily, in raw disbelief. Then her phone buzzed inside her pocket. A notification. The camera's cloud backup had uploaded a clip. Hands trembling, she opened it. The video was only 12 seconds long. It showed the alley wall beneath the red sign. Ming's own shadow stood in profile. Beside it, the second shadow leaned closer. And at the end of the clip, both shadows turned their heads in opposite directions. Ming dropped the phone. Back in the alley, unseen behind the rain, the red neon buzzed like something pleased. That night she did not sleep. At 3:17 a.m., while the city still hissed under rain, she played the clip for the 10th time and noticed something she had missed before. The second shadow was not trying to stand beside her. It was trying to line itself up with her body, as if, eventually, it planned to replace her. And at the very end of the video, just before the static swallowed the frame, there was a reflection in the studio glass. A woman under a black umbrella stood at the alley entrance, watching. The same woman who had warned her to leave. Only in the reflection, the woman did not have a face either. By morning, Hong Kong looked ordinary again. The rain had stopped. Delivery vans clogged the roads. Wet market vendors shouted over crates of vegetables and fish. School children in uniforms hurried beneath footbridges, and office workers flooded MTR stations carrying iced coffee and exhaustion. Under daylight, Ming almost hated herself for being frightened. Almost, because the video was still there. Not just on her phone, but in her laptop backup, in her editing software autosave, and in a random export folder she knew she had not used in weeks. Every copy showed the same impossible thing. 2 shadows where there should have been 1, and at the very end, a reflection of the umbrella woman standing in the rain like a witness. Ming had spent years correcting color, stabilizing footage, removing glitches, and identifying compression artifacts. She understood what cameras could distort and what they could not. Shadows could blur, reflections could duplicate, low-light sensors could smear edges into nonsense, but shadows did not move independently, and reflections did not invent faceless women. By noon, she had done what rational people always do when reason fails. She went looking for someone old enough to know a story before it became a rumor. Lanfang Lane in daylight was disappointing. The alley seemed smaller, dirtier, more pathetic. The red neon sign was off. Water dripped from balconies. The chained photo studio looked dead, its windows clouded with grime. Nothing in the lane suggested the impossible had happened there. A courier biked past without even glancing in, had laundry hung from bamboo poles above as if nothing in the world had ever been wrong. Ming stood across from the studio and watched the sign. A newspaper vendor under a striped canopy kept watching her back. Finally, he called out, "If you're waiting for that shop to open, you're 40 years late." Ming crossed over. The vendor was ancient. Thin wrists, nicotine fingers, eyes sharp as fishhooks. His stall sold old tabloids, cigarettes, bottled tea, and lottery slips. He had the kind of face Hong Kong carved into old men who had outlived governments, gangs, developers, and common sense. She pointed toward the photo studio. Golden memories. What happened there? The old man looked at her for a long moment, then at the alley. "Who told you to ask?" "No one." He snorted softly. "Then you already know enough." Ming took out her phone and showed him a still frame from the clip. Not the faceless reflection, just the second shadow. The old man's expression died. He reached out with 2 fingers and lowered the phone without touching the screen. "You filmed it?" Ming nodded. He looked around the street as though checking who might overhear. Then he said, "Come back after sunset." "I don't say these things in daylight." "Why not?" "Because in daylight," he said, "people think they are safe." He refused to say more. So Ming spent the rest of the afternoon digging. Public records gave her almost nothing. Golden Memories Photo Studio had once been a family-run portrait business opened in the late 1960s. Marriage photos, school portraits, funerary images, immigration documents. In those days, such places mattered. A photograph could be a passport out of poverty, a proof of love, a memorial before cremation, a face preserved for an altar. Then, in October 1983, the owner had vanished. His name was Leung Pa-kin. The only remaining news clipping Ming found was short and vague, a report of unusual circumstances surrounding the disappearance of the photographer and a possible link to an electrical fire that damaged the studio interior. No body recovered, no suspects, business permanently shut. The article included a blurry black and white image of the storefront. The red neon sign above it was the same, but what caught Ming's attention was the people in the photo. A small crowd had gathered outside police tape. Curious neighbors, a woman crying into a handkerchief, a teenage boy staring straight at the camera, and beside him, how clearly visible on the wall, was a second shadow. By the time night fell, Ming had decided 2 things. First, she was not going back to Lanfang Lane alone. Second, she already knew she would go back. Her only friend likely to agree to something this stupid was Jun. Junho was a sound engineer for indie films, a night owl, and a connoisseur of bad ideas. He had helped Ming record everything from rooftop interviews to Ghost Month street operas. He believed exactly enough in the supernatural to stay interested, but not enough to stay away. When she showed him the clip, he watched it twice without speaking. Then he said, "That's not fake." "I know. That makes this worse." "I know. And you still want to go back." Ming met his eyes. Jun sighed. "Then we do it properly." At 9:40 p.m., They returned to Lanfong Lane with 2 cameras, audio gear, extra batteries, portable LED lights, an EMF detector Jun had bought as a joke years ago, and a small packet of temple talismans his mother had forced on him when he texted her the location. The newspaper vendor was waiting. He stood half inside his stall, smoking, as if he had known they would come. "You brought a friend," he said. Jun gave an awkward wave. Ming asked, "Tell me what happened here." The old man crushed his cigarette under his sandal. The photographer, Leung Pa-kin, was good. Too good. People said he could make anyone look beautiful. Not with tricks, with timing. He knew the exact moment a face became what it truly was. The old man's voice lowered. That made him popular with the dead. Jun frowned. Meaning? In the old days, while families brought photos of the dead to studios for funeral enlargements, memorial portraits, altar frames, some said Leung became obsessed with what a camera captured that the eye missed. Reflections, outlines, things standing just outside the frame. He nodded toward the closed studio. He began doing private sessions after midnight. No family, no records, only one person at a time. Ming felt the lane grow colder, though the air was still damp and warm. "What kind of sessions?" The old man looked at her with deep dislike. "The kind people ask for when they are desperate. To see the dead, to speak to them, to prove someone is still near." Jun muttered, "That always ends well." The vendor ignored him. One night, Leung started saying light and shadow are not one thing. He said every person carries a shadow made by the world, and another made by memory, grief, guilt, longing. Most people never see the second one. He pointed upward at the dead red sign. But he found a way to show it. Ming whispered, "With the neon? With the photographs?" The old man nodded slowly. The sign was only a lure. The red light softened edges. The rain made reflections deep. He photographed people when their second shadow came closest to the surface. At first it only appeared in prints, then it began appearing on walls, then in mirrors, then walking behind them outside the studio. Jun looked at the locked storefront. What happened to him? The vendor's face hardened. He took a portrait of himself. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Ming asked, And afterward, said the vendor. There were 2 Leung Pa-kins seen in the alley. One entered the studio, one never left. A tram bell rang somewhere beyond the street, absurdly normal and far away. Jun shifted the equipment bag on his shoulder. You could have led with that. The old man reached into his stall and handed Ming a small wrapped bundle. Inside was a square hand mirror tied with red thread. If you must go in, he said, never trust the shadows on the ground. Watch the ones in glass. Glass tells you which one still belongs to you. Jun blinked. If. The old man looked at the door. It opens after midnight when the rain begins. As if on cue, thunder rolled above the tenements. The first drops started falling 5 minutes later. By 11:58 p.m., the lane was empty except for Ming and Jun. The city beyond still lived, buses, scooters, and voices, but the alley seemed cut away from it. Rain slid down pipes, water gathered in the cracks between tiles. Neon signs sputtered into life one by one, blue, green, white, and finally, red. The golden memories sign lit up. The lane changed. Its red glow washed every surface in a bruised color. Window bars cast prison-like patterns across the walls. Reflections deepened in puddles until they looked like holes rather than water. Jun checked the audio recorder and frowned. There's a low hum on every channel. It's the sign, Ming said. No, it's too layered, like... He listened through one earbud, like whispering under a transformer. The chain on the photo studio door rattled. Neither of them touched it. Then it fell open. The door eased inward on its own. Inside, darkness waited, thick, patient. They dried despite the weather outside. Jun stared. You first? Ming glared at him. Then she stepped inside. The smell hit her immediately. Not mildew, not rot. Developer fluid, wet paper, dust, incense ash, and something sweet like old powder left on dead skin. Jun's light swept across the room. The studio was larger than it appeared from outside. A reception desk sat near the front with appointment books stacked neatly beneath a layer of ash. Framed portraits lined the walls, families, brides, businessmen, old women in formal jackets. But every glass frame had been cracked from the inside outward. At the back stood a photography backdrop painted with a fake garden, an antique camera on a tripod, and metal rails where finished prints once hung. Some still did. Dozens of photographs swayed gently in the darkroom draft. Jun whispered, "No wind." Ming took out the mirror wrapped in red thread. In the glass she saw herself, June behind her, and something taller standing near the painted garden backdrop. She spun. Nothing there. The hanging photographs clicked softly against one another. Ming moved closer. The portraits were all wrong. At first glance, they were ordinary period photos from the 70s and 80s. Wedding couples, children holding report cards, elderly parents with grandchildren. But in every single one, the shadows behind the subjects were not aligned properly. Some stood too far left. Some leaned in with unfamiliar posture. Some looked like someone else entirely. And several subjects had no shadows at all. June's flashlight beam stopped on one portrait near the center. A young woman sat elegantly in a chair, hands folded in her lap. She wore a dark qipao and held a black umbrella closed across her knees. Her face was calm, severe, and unmistakable. "The woman from your clip," June said. Ming stepped closer. A handwritten note beneath the print read, "Madame Quan, final session." The date beneath it, October 12th, 1983. June moved the light to the next frame. A man stood beside an old camera, smiling shyly. It was Lung Pa Kin, presumably, the vanished photographer. But his shadow on the wall behind him was facing the wrong direction, toward him, not away. Ming felt a cold drop slide down the back of her neck. Not water, something like fingers. The studio lights flashed, once, twice, then stayed on. Soft red bulbs hidden in the ceiling bathed the room like a darkroom tray full of blood. At the back of the studio, beyond the painted backdrop, a curtain slowly pulled aside. A second room lay beyond it, and from within came the sound of an old camera shutter. Click, Jun whispered, "We are leaving." But Ming had already lifted her camera, and in the viewfinder, standing inside the curtain-lit back room, was a line of faceless people waiting to have their portraits taken. At the very end of the line stood the umbrella woman. This time she raised one pale hand and pointed directly at Ming. Then, every portrait on the walls turned black at once, and from somewhere close, very close, a voice that sounded like paper tearing whispered, "She came back for her face." Jun grabbed Ming's arm and nearly dragged her toward the front door. The studio did not let them. The door they had entered through now opened, not to Lanfang Lane, but to another room of the studio they had not seen before, a narrow chamber lined floor to ceiling with framed portraits. Their glass surfaces reflected the red light in trembling strips. As Ming stumbled to a halt, one of the frames near the door cracked with a tiny sharp sound. Then another. Then a third. Jun backed away. No, absolutely not. The room behind the curtain glowed deeper red. Click, click. The old shutter sound came again. Patient as breathing, Ming forced herself to think. The alley, the sign, the reflections, the vendor's warning. The mirror tied with red thread still in her hand. She lifted it. The reflection did not match the room. In the mirror, the portrait-lined chamber behind them was crowded with people. Men in old suits, women in qipaos and wedding dresses, children with flat expressions, elderly faces powdered for memorial photographs, all faceless. They stood silently between the hanging frames, bodies turned toward Ming and Jun as if awaiting instructions. One by one they began to raise their arms, not at Jun, at Ming. Jun saw the expression on her face and whispered, "What is it?" "Don't turn around," she said. Naturally, he started to. She grabbed his jacket. "Don't." A frame exploded off the wall behind them, shattering on the floor. In the broken glass, Ming saw shadows writhing independently of the room's light, long dark shapes dragging themselves toward her feet, like ink returning to a pen. The red bulbs overhead buzzed louder. The sound was no longer electrical. It was almost vocal now, layered with sighs and soft, wet breathing. Jun swallowed. "Tell me what to do." Ming looked toward the camera tripod near the painted backdrop in the main studio. The antique camera still stood there, lens pointed toward the room beyond the curtain. Beside it sat a shallow tray of undeveloped prints submerged in black liquid that should have dried out 40 years ago. She understood suddenly. This place was not simply haunted, it was still working. Leung Pa Kin had not just photographed shadows, he had fed something through the act of fixing an image, forcing memory, grief, identity, and light into a frame until the second shadow had enough form to separate. The studio became a place where the self could be copied badly, or stolen. And Madame Kwan, the umbrella woman, had come back because hers had been taken. "We need to destroy the camera," Ming said. Jun looked at the antique setup, and then at the impossible rooms around them. "Great. Easy. Anything else? Don't let your shadow touch any other shadow." "That sounds manageable and impossible at the same time." A woman laughed softly from behind the curtain, not cruelly, almost sadly. Ming stepped sideways into the main studio again, careful to keep her eyes on the reflective surfaces, the portrait glass, the cracked reception mirror, the hand mirror in her grip. In every reflection, the faceless figures had shifted closer. In the real room, nothing moved. The antique camera waited. Its black cloth hung like mourning clothes over the back. Brass fittings glinted red. A cable release trailed to the floor like a vein. The lens itself was wrong. Too deep, too glossy, reflecting more room than should fit in a piece of glass. Jun moved with her, checking corners with the flashlight, though both of them knew physical corners no longer meant much. The curtain to the back room stood open now. The line of faceless people remained there, silent, patient. At the front stood Madame Kwan. Her black umbrella was open indoors, rainwater dripping from its edges though the floor beneath it stayed dry. Ming called out, her voice shaking only slightly. "What do you want?" Madame Kwan did not answer with her mouth. Instead, every hanging portrait in the studio answered at once. "My face." The words layered over each other in different ages, different tones, male and female, young and old. The sound filled the room so completely, Jun clapped his hands over his ears. Ming stared at the woman's portrait on the wall. In the print, Madame Kwan still had a face, elegant, severe, human, but the figure standing in the back room did not. The studio had kept the image and hollowed the person. Ming asked, "Did Long do this to all of you?" The portraits whispered back. "He showed us what followed. He promised we could keep what was lost." He let the second shadow step closer. "He took the better face," Jun muttered. "I hate every word of this." The antique camera clicked by itself. A fresh print slid slowly out from a developing slot beneath it, wet and gleaming. Ming approached despite every instinct telling her not to. The photograph was of Jun, not standing beside her in the present room, but seated in an old wooden chair against the painted garden backdrop, hands folded, expression numb. Behind him stood a shadow too tall and too thin, one long hand resting on his shoulder. Jun saw the print and went pale. That wasn't there before. Another print emerged. This one showed Ming, only her face was blurred, as though the camera had not yet decided which version to keep. The black liquid in the developing tray rippled. A third photograph rose halfway from beneath the surface without anyone touching it. Madame Kwan, her face intact, her shadow missing. Ming looked from the print to the faceless woman behind the curtain. A bargain, a replacement. The studio could restore what it had taken, but only by taking from another image, another self. The second shadow was not just a ghost. It was the part of a person loosened from the body when light, memory, and desire aligned in the wrong place, and once separated, it wanted the body back, not its own body, any body that matched. Ming felt sudden movement at her feet. In the cracked reflection of the floor tiles, her shadow had bent at the neck, though she had not. It was no longer aligned correctly. Jun saw it too and swore violently. "Ming, I know." Her shadow was peeling away, not much, only at the shoulder first, then at the side of the face, as if invisible fingers were slowly lifting a layer of darkness from her body. The studio wanted a final session. She looked at the old camera, then at the wet prints, then at the ceiling where the red bulbs glowed like low watching eyes. "You said glass shows which shadow still belongs to you," she whispered to herself, remembering the vendor's words. "Not the ground, the glass." Ming lifted the hand mirror and angled it toward the camera lens. For the first time, she saw what was actually standing behind the antique tripod. Not Lung Pakin exactly. A shape in photographer's clothing, half man and half darkness, its body made of overlapping exposures, multiple hands adjusting focus, a face blurred by motion, as if it could not stay in one identity long enough to be recognized. Where its eyes should have been were two burning points of reflected neon red. The thing paused when it saw itself in the mirror. That was enough. "Jun, the light stand." He reacted instantly, swinging the metal light stand like a spear into the antique camera. The first blow bent the tripod. The second shattered the lens with a scream that did not sound mechanical at all. Every portrait in the studio shrieked. The faceless line behind the curtain lurched forward. Madame Kwan moved first, gliding rather than walking, umbrella open, empty face aimed at Ming with terrible hunger. Jun struck the camera again and again until the wooden body split open. Inside there was no film mechanism, only bundles of black hair, waterlogged photographs and folded paper talismans stained dark with age. The red bulbs burst. The studio dropped into darkness lit only by the neon outside and Jun's frantic flashlight beam. Shadows flew across the walls like birds. Ming's feet slipped as the floor turned slick, not with water, but with spilled developer fluid mixed with something thicker. Broken frames crashed around them. The faceless people were no longer confined to reflections. They were in the room now, reaching, groping, trying to press their unfinished darkness into living bodies. Jun yelled, "The door! Find the real door!" But every doorway now opened into more portraits, more rooms, more red-lit chambers that repeated the studio endlessly, like a maze built of memory and bad copies. Ming fell against the reception desk. Her hand struck something metallic, a fuse switchboard, old, greasy, connected by exposed conduit to the neon sign outside. The sign, the lure, the power, the red light that softened edges, deepened reflections, and kept the second shadow near the surface. If the camera was the mouth, the sign was the hook. "Ming!" Jun shouted again, he backing away from a faceless child reaching toward his chest. She yanked the switchboard cover open. Inside, ancient ceramic fuses hummed under current they should not still have carried. Wires ran upward through the wall toward the sign. Madame Kwan was almost upon her now, umbrella dripping, the hole where her face should be trembling like water under wind. Ming grabbed the heaviest cable she could reach and pulled. Nothing. She braced one foot against the wall and tore again. The first wire snapped. Outside, the red neon sign flickered. The faceless figures convulsed. Jun saw it immediately. "Do it again." Ming tore another wire free. Sparks exploded across the desk. The room flashed white-blue for half a second. And in that instant, she saw every second shadow in the studio attached to the walls by threads of light leading back to the sign. The third cable would not come loose. Madame Kwan's empty hand closed around Ming's wrist. Ice shot through her entire arm. Not cold exactly. Absence. A draining sensation, as though the shape of her hand was being remembered elsewhere. Ming screamed and shoved the red thread mirror into Madame Kwan's faceless head. The glass touched emptiness. For one impossible second, a face appeared in the reflection only. Not on the woman herself, but inside the mirror, stern eyes, narrow mouth, wet black hair tucked neatly behind one ear. Madame Kwan saw herself. She let go. Her body recoiled in silent anguish. Ming tore the final cable free. Outside, the red neon died. Everything stopped. The faceless crowd froze. The shadows on the walls flattened. The whispering ended. Then the entire studio began to collapse inward, not physically at first, but visually. Depth folded. Rooms lost distance. Portraits blurred into black rectangles. The false chambers vanished one by one, revealing the real front room beneath. Rainwater suddenly blew in through broken window gaps. The old reception desk split down the middle. Ceiling plaster rained down. Jun grabbed Ming and ran for the entrance. This time, the door opened to Lanfang Lane. Real rain, real street, real night air. They stumbled out just as the studio behind them exhaled a final gust of chemical stale darkness. The interior lights went completely dead. The red sign above the door cracked from one end to the other and dropped a shower of glass into the alley. Our neighbors shouted from upper windows. A dog barked somewhere nearby. A scooter engine roared past the lane mouth. Normal city sounds flooded back all at once like oxygen. Ming collapsed against the opposite wall, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. Jun crouched beside her, laughing in raw disbelief. "We're alive," he said. "I think so." He looked down at the wet pavement and went still. Ming followed his gaze. They each had one shadow. Only one. For several moments neither of them moved. Then, Ming noticed someone standing at the alley entrance under the rain. The newspaper vendor. He did not approach. He only watched the dead studio and nodded once, as though confirming an old debt had finally shifted. Ming pushed herself upright. "Is it over?" The vendor looked at the dark broken sign. Nothing like this ends," he said. "It only sleeps when the light goes out." "What about them?" she asked, glancing toward the ruined interior. "The people inside." He was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. "Some shadows return, some do not remember the way." Then he walked off into the rain without saying goodbye. The official report called it a minor electrical collapse in an abandoned commercial unit. By morning, city workers sealed the studio with fresh boards. The broken sign was removed. Nobody in the neighborhood wanted to discuss it. A week later, developers bought the property. A month later, the whole building was marked for redevelopment. Ming tried to let it become just another buried Hong Kong story, but some things remained. Jun's audio recorder captured no human speech in the studio, only layers of camera shutters firing in impossible sequences, and once, very clearly, a woman saying in Cantonese, "He gave me your face." 3 old portraits disappeared from the wreckage before demolition crews arrived, including Madame Kwan's final session print. And when Ming reviewed the footage from that last night, she found a single frame, just one, taken after the sign died and before they fled. It showed the studio in darkness. The faceless figures were gone. Only one person remained inside. A man stood behind the broken antique camera, his features blurred beyond recognition, but the shadow behind him was sharp. It was Ming's. Months later, on another rainy night in another district, Ming passed a puddle beneath a convenience store sign and froze. Or in the reflection, her body stood under blue-white light, and just half a step behind her was a second shadow, faint but patient, keeping pace. When she spun around, the street was empty. Above her, in the glass of a darkened office tower, she caught the brief outline of a woman holding a black umbrella, watching, waiting, as if somewhere in the city, beneath all the signs and rain and restless electricity, another red light had already turned on.